the one silver lining that I pulled out a magnifying glass to search for, and I found the silver lining with this is that whenever these conversations happen 5-10 years ago, the like our side would be like, hey, the Palestinians are being, brutalized. The answer would be, too bad. They're bad people. They need to go. Like, end of story. But now you are seeing a lot of both sides, which did not happen 10 years ago. Like, the both sides argument was they wouldn't even,
That's true.
cede the fact that Israel's committing war crimes. But a
Yeah,
lot of people are
that's
now.
true.
John, I think you mentioned that. Like, some discussions you've had, but like, okay, that is pretty messed up. Now, that is a good sign. It's slow progress. It might not come fast enough, but it is a good sign that it's kind of like what we always say about, Republicans, that whenever they say, well, both sides are the problem, that means they've been cornered. They find the Republicans doing something that's indefensible, so they got to say, oh, it's both sides. And that's what's happening now a lot. Well, more than it ever did before. So that's one thing that does offer me some hope here.
We have elected representatives in this country calling Israel an apartheid state, and that, as much as it feels like a nothing, it's a big deal. Desmond, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was wanting just to kind of like close out this conversation here with just some final thoughts by everybody. I like you, TJ, and John, I do believe that we are seeing progress here. And I think that a lot of that is coming from this age of the internet. We're all able to share information so quickly with each other. And thankfully, the internet hasn't really been censored that much just yet. So we're able to be able to communicate about all these different things going on. And it's just waking so many people up to what has been the whole time, but people did not know until now. And now people can make more informed decisions. And we are seeing that. There are protests happening around the country here in America that are pro-Palestinian. And as some people in America do, we have Republican lawmakers who are calling these demonstrations pro-Hamas demonstrations, not pro-Palestine demonstrations. And that's not totally unexpected because, let someone tell you who they are, just believe them. But to see Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, essentially see these things as well. And she said that it was bigotry and callousness of the people who were protesting in Times Square for, Palestinian liberation. That one definitely caught me off guard a little bit. And I was very, very sad to see that. And I know a lot of people have attacked her for several different reasons from the left, but it's beyond tone deaf. Just obviously just a terrible thing to say. And my final thought, alongside of that is something that you were mentioning in a previous, conversation, Erica, about what we're seeing right now in Israel might give them, the green light to do the things that they've always wanted to do. I am very much afraid of what that might transpire to be, because we are seeing people who are standing up for Palestine, not just here in America, but also over in the Middle East. We're seeing demonstrations happening in Morocco, over in Syria, in Yemen, in Jordan. There are some rumors. It's nothing more than just rumors, but there has been it has been repeated by several major outlets that Iran had some kind of connection to the Hamas attacks originally. So now there are people calling for war with Iran. And I got to tell you, I don't know exactly where this is all going to go, but if this were to lead to some kind of revolt in that part of the world, it wouldn't just be confined to the people in that part of the world. For those who are not aware, Iran, for instance, has a military pact with Russia and with China. If they were to be attacked for any reason, Russia and China would come to their defense. It would get very nasty very quickly if those things didn't start to go that direction. And so we're going to be paying attention to it here on the channel. We're going to be bringing people updates, as these things come along, because unfortunately, I fear that the worst might be yet to come. But it's this is a developing situation, and it's I think it's terrifying what might come next.
That is the thing that has kept me up most at night, that this feels so similar to 9/11, in that the knee-jerk response has been bloodthirsty calls for war. And I remember growing up, For those, I was born in 96, so I barely remember. I was 5 for 9/11. But I do remember it. And I remember that time period and the animosity. And, again, I was a kid, so I didn't experience it firsthand, but I remember. And I grew up with friends who were, Muslim Americans who they informed me a little bit more later in life. And by high school, I had pretty much arrived at the conclusion that, we were wrong to invade Iraq. It was terrible, everything we had done. And I felt this way because I was seeing media joking about like fucking episodes of South Park Family, like just like joking about how, fucking America World Police, and like how I was like, oh, it's obviously clear and obvious to the adults who are making this shit that this was stupid and we were wrong for it. And by the time I'm an adult, they will have fixed this. And then I became an adult and they didn't fix it. I realized that it was my job to fix it. And I also don't know how to fix it. All I can do is joke about it. And like, it's such a fucking horrifying realization that your country might go to war, and there's nothing based on total fucking lies, and thousands of I might get fucking drafted. I know that like that seems unrealistic, but if the plausible scenario you just played out, Desmond, happens, my ass is getting drafted, and like it's all going to be based on a massive fucking lie. And it just, I feel like we've learned nothing, and it's so defeating.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
Oh, so I'm not quite as worried about a large scale war with a nation like Iran. Not saying it's not possible. It certainly is, but with there's a very good reason we haven't gone to war with Iran. Believe me, we want to. Like we've wanted to for a long time, but Iran is not like Iraq. Like Iran is much bigger, much more powerful. The terrain, imagine like if Iraq had the terrain of Afghanistan and like 10 times the money and twice the people. Like that's it. It would be like it would be an unwinnable war. And at most it'd be like a proxy war, like we were kind of doing all the time anyway. And not downplaying like a possibility of the conflict, but it's just that wars between like two major powers like that. I don't know if that's what you're referencing necessarily, John, but it's no one really wins. It's like when people talk about us going to war with China. That's not going to happen because we both lose. No matter who wins, we both lose. But like the one time I was actually afraid that we would go to war with Iran is when Trump assainated Qasem Soleimani. I was still in the army at the time. Like that terrified me. And,
Jesus.
Because if there was a time to call, go to war, that would have been it. I mean, it's amazing that they didn't retaliate more than they did. One thing that I do find interesting about, speaking of violence here, I didn't, if we don't air this is fine, because I don't want to get you guys in trouble or anything, but
we're airing this, so be careful.
I'm annoyed at our fetish for non-violent protest. And before people get mad at me for saying that, what I mean is if you look at our heroes, like the people that we preach to be heroes to our children, George Washington, Julius Caesar, people like we Douglas MacArthur, Dwight Eisenhower, we shove forward the people who actually fought for what they believed in. They thought something was wrong. They stood up, they fought, and they made things right. Now, that only seems to work for a certain type of person, though, because now let's shift over to the Black community. Who is the paragon of like the best example of Black civil rights? It's Martin Luther King. And they say, well, Martin Luther King just politely asked for the racism to stop and it all went away. That's who you should be like. And, Malcolm X fought against racism too, but he was a big meanie pants about it. And that's not cool. And that's kind of how people view, like, with this whole Palestine thing. It's like, yeah, maybe if they were a little more civilized, we would treat them better. So, like, if you're, a white man, you pick up a weapon and stand a post. If you're a minority, you pick up a sign and stand in a field. Like, that's how they want you to protest, because you can you think of any examples of like a minority figure held up for conquering a great cause that did so violently? And how many, like, white people can you think of that got something big accomplished that didn't do it? Like Susan B. Anthony is like the only one I can think of, but I'm sure there's more, but there's a lot more in one column than there are on the other.
Yeah, TJ, like I think that's, to re-answer my question from earlier, like, why is this important to talk about? That's one of them, in that I'm on record on this show, on my shit for Counterpoint Politics. Like, I am a big advocate for nonviolent resistance. Not because I necessarily think it's the more morally justifiable thing to do, although I do, but more because it's the more effective thing to do. There's research on this subject, and like nonviolent resistance has twice the success rate of violent resistance. And that is because...
Hold on, everyone. Before, because this is a whole different conversation. Let's just keep it real. This is a whole different conversation.
I'm looping it back in here.
Let's end the conversation on Palestine first before we go to that. But,
yeah. No, I'm looping it back into Palestine. No.
And I can talk more about this in Palestine.
Yeah, this gets looped right back in because, as I was saying, like, if you look at the research, it's pretty clear and obvious, like, that nonviolent resistance works because it gets more people to support your cause. But like, that's the problem, is that it creates a unfair advantage for the people who already have an advantage. Like, yes, that is reality, but it forces the minority group, the people with less power, to not use force to fight back against the people who are using force against them. In the Israel-Palestine situation, if you expect the Palestinians to never use force, what the fuck? If we're going to be giving money to the Israelis who are using force, and your argument is that, well, Palestine should peacefully protest, they shouldn't use force, then why the fuck are you giving money to Israel? Again, like, even if you think this is a both sides, even casualties scenario, which it is not, even if you think that, how can you possibly justify giving money to Israel if you're saying Palestine needs to be a little more peaceful? There's no logical consistency to that world.